Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Today is a good day. I'm in great spirits. I'm going to be hosting my first ever event in Birmingham, UK on Saturday, the 5th of April. It's basically going to be a healing event. It's going to be a transformative event in which we'll be discussing reparenting yourself, healing your mother and father wound. I'm so excited to be in a place where I can bring something in person. I can bring something into the world. I'm going to be bringing the healing vibes, the transformativeness, the healing conversations to you in person. And yes, I'm going to have two amazing speakers who do amazing things for the community. This is actually going to be a series of different events that fall under the umbrella of All Aligned Soul Sessions. The name tells you exactly what it is. It's a soul session. It's for the mind, body, and soul. So on that note, I think that it makes sense for us to speak about like reparenting yourself and like healing your mother and father wound. I feel like reparenting yourself is an interesting concept. It's a powerful act of healing and taking accountability and responsibility for your needs and your wants and your desires. And the whole concept of reparenting yourself is basically reparenting your inner child, giving yourself the things that you wanted as a child, things that you didn't get as a child, or even maybe some of the things that you did get as a child, those positive things, and kind of implementing those into your life for those who had negative relationships with your parents, had negative attachment styles with your parents, or just have difficulty dealing with some of the things that you went through as a child and how it's impacting you on an emotional level as an adult. Actually could be impacting you on a physical, mental, and spiritual level. So there's so much that is interlinked and as part of that sort of healing experience. Essentially, we all have an inner child. Your inner child represents your early years. It's that part of you that now as an adult gives you that childlike joy. That joy where everything's just going to be all right, that joy that kind of takes you away from all the stress of life. Because literally children shouldn't really be dealing with much stress. Like, that's just the reality. Children should be taken care of by responsible, healthy, loving adults who are affirmative, who are kind, who are nurturing and non-neglectful. Of course, children are going to have hard times outside of the home. When they go to school, you're going to be dealing with other things. But naturally speaking, children should be in environments where they flourish and they're growing and they feel like they can be their authentic childlike self. That's what childlike joy is, that authenticity, that joy, that ease, that independence to be yourself without fear of, judgment. But the reality is that for some of us, that's not our experience. Like, as a child, some people have to grow up so fast because of the parents within their life are emotionally immature. Some of us didn't actually experience loving environments where we felt like we were affirmed, we felt like we were prioritized, we were protected, and we feel safe. And that could be because of so many different reasons. It could be because your parents neglected to, prioritize you, look after you, or they had their own emotional things going on, which meant that they couldn't focus on you as a child, parenting you in the right ways. So that's why as an adult we might be struggling with a lot of things on an emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual level because of the things that we didn't receive from our parents. For example, if you experience neglect or abandonment and your emotional needs weren't met as a child, you might be an adult who has a fear of rejection, has a fear of abandonment. You might be an adult who holds on to toxic relationships or friendships, who is quite codependent on these things in order to feel safe and protected, even if it's a relationship or an environment in which you actually aren't safe or protected, in which you aren't loved in the right ways. But because of your need to have someone there, need to not feel rejected, you hold on to these things. And I can definitely relate to that, because when I was a child, there were certain emotional needs that weren't met for me. The issue is when you're a parent who has children and you haven't worked on those things, that sometimes they show up in different ways when it comes to your children. And children aren't silly. We can see certain things. We know when our needs aren't being met because we can feel it on an internal level, we can feel it emotionally, sometimes mentally. We feel it within our spirit. Something simple as wanting physical affection with your parent, or talk to your parent about certain things, and them not being available for you to do that or have that sort of relationship with them. And as a child, you feel that. And it's tenfold for children as well, because the thing is with children is that they don't know how to manage their emotions yet. They're not emotionally mature to make decisions. They're not emotionally mature to understand, fundamentally what it is that's going on, or some things that they're feeling. A child might be able to identify that they feel sad by just like crying or responding in that way, but they might not understand the complexities of their emotions. Children typically have a basic understanding of what they're feeling. So when a child feels sad, they know that they're sad a lot of the times because they cry or they act in a way which represents their sadness. Or if a child is angry, they kind of sense that they're angry because of how they're responding, and also adults can sense this as well. But do they know the complexities of the emotions and where it might be stemming from? Not necessarily, which is why you see that there are some kids who act out when they go into the world, because when they're at home, their needs aren't being met, or they're being neglected, or they're being mistreated, they're being abused. It's for their adults or the caregivers, their parents in their lives, to identify these things, these emotions, to soothe their emotions and to teach them how to self-soothe. There's a lot of things that are not a child's responsibility. That's why the reality is children are supposed to be experiencing joys, because they shouldn't be having the responsibilities of adult people. I'll give you another example as well. Like, I've shared this a lot of times in my past videos. I was criticized a lot as a child. I was rarely affirmed, just feeling emotionally neglected as well. That feeling of not being prioritized was a strong feeling within my childhood. It came with a strong level of disappointment. And I feel like that level of disappointment kind of followed me through my teenage years to my adult life. Just feeling like I will always experience and expect disappointment from people, typically relationships as well. Like, always feeling like I can expect disappointment from them. So at some point, I can't trust that this person really has my best interest at heart, and that they will always disappoint me. That did lead me to feeling disappointed so much in my life. And also the experience of being codependent on relationships and feeling like I needed to find love in toxic and unhealthy situations, and not really understanding that I can kind of create those loving experiences myself. And the most interesting thing for me was actually realizing that some of the experiences that I was having as an adult was actually mirroring some of the experiences I had as a child. So some of the things that like my mom did or my dad did was showing up in some of the people that I had around me. I could kind of link that to something that happened within my childhood or a certain particular experience. For me, when it came to like starting my healing journey, I started to realize that a lot of my experiences were becoming very similar. I was consistently in a cycle, and because of that, I had to kind of really acknowledge how I was showing up and what it is that was going on within me that meant that I was attracting these experiences or these people. One of the things that scientists say is that the most primitive parts of our brain lies in familiarity, which is why a lot of us are attracted to what is familiar to us. So some aspects that your parents has, some aspects of their personality, whether positive or negative, will show up in some of the choices that you make. And one fundamental aspect of healing your parental wound is finding links and connections, connecting the dots to certain aspects of your childhood to what you're going through as an adult. We go through painful things and we have difficult experiences. We want to push them under a rug. Our painful memories, we don't always want to acknowledge them, but reparenting is you actually acknowledging your painful memories. If you look back in your childhood, some of the painful memories, think about what you needed in those moments. Think about what you didn't get. Think about what you did get and how that impacted you on an emotional level, your level of abandonment and how that feels within you and how that's showing up as an adult. As a child, we are naturally attached to our parents. We're naturally attached, especially to our mothers. So we form attachment styles in the womb. Even we form attachment styles as soon as we come out of the womb. So when there's a disruption there, or when there's some neglect or abandonment that happens, our sense of self-esteem, our sense of self is damaged in a way, because we are supposed to be learning healthy attachment styles. So it's why for a lot of us, we end up being adults with unhealthy attachment styles, with anxious attachment styles or avoidant attachment styles, because of the lack of attachment or unhealthy attachment that we formed as children with our parents. And so when there's that disconnect there, it means that there's something within you on an emotional level. There's literally children walking around with this void, and it follows them throughout their childhood into their adulthood. And so that void that we feel, we're always going to be looking for ways to fill that void, and that might be filled in the most unhealthy of ways. It's where reparenting needs to come in. It's where I can now give myself what I didn't get from my parents, basically. These things shape your self-esteem as a child. It shapes your sense of self-worth. And sometimes when a child just doesn't have that, experience, they do grow up with this low self-esteem, low self-worth, not feeling like they have value within the world. For a lot of us, in order to have healthy self-esteem, we have to feel like we have something to add to the world, like we have value within ourselves. That causes us not to settle. That allows us to put boundaries in place. That allows us to say no to things, say yes to things, even to make healthy decisions that are aligned with us, that are authentic to who we are. If you want to start working on healing your inner child, it's so important to acknowledge those things. So if you're someone who didn't experience affirmations or kindness, and if you felt like you were put down a lot or you wasn't uplifted, then what will be beneficial for you is speaking to your inner child. So start by acknowledging your inner child. Acknowledge that your inner child actually exists, that it's there, right? And it needs acknowledgement, it needs love, and it needs affirmation. So that might mean that maybe you could wake up in the morning and do an affirmation practice, telling your inner child you are loved, you are valued, you are wanted, you are smart. So many positive things that you can say to your inner child that reflects some of the stuff that you didn't experience as a child, or some of the things that you would have liked to have heard as a child. And if you had things that are like negative as a child, like, oh, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're silly, any negative things, you can flip that. Now as an adult, you can tell your inner child the opposite of that. So instead of reaffirming that you're dumb, you can say to your inner child, no, actually you are smart, you're intelligent. Let's say, for example, if you heard that you were worthless, no, you can say, actually you are worthy. You can say you have so much value. Little practices and little tools and techniques that you can use to really acknowledge your inner child. But acknowledging your inner child is the first point. It's important for you to reparent yourself, because you're essentially being that parent that you needed as a child, being that parent that makes you feel safe, that makes you feel protected, and that's what you deserve. Because a lot of times we sometimes battle with, you know, what we feel like we deserve, because some of us who might have gotten like certain things from our parents, such as roof over your head, food on the table, fundamental things that your parents are supposed to give you, they may not have showed up emotionally for me, but they did do this. They did put the food on the table, they did keep a roof over my head, they were the parent that was there. Like, I've heard that a few times. Like, you know, I've heard, especially from men, that have said, well, my mum was the only one that stayed. You know, my dad left. My dad didn't show up for me, but my mum stayed. Yeah, she did this, and yeah, she harmed me in this way, or she spoke to me in this unkind way, and that has hurt me and harmed me. So then there's that like level of like acknowledgement that we don't want to have about certain other things that we needed, things that were also fundamental. So just as much as like putting food on the table and keeping a roof over your head is fundamental, having your emotional needs met is also important. Feeling affirmed is also important. Feeling loved, feeling prioritized, not feeling consistently disappointed and neglected is important. It's just as important as those things. Those things generally shape who you are, shape the choices that you make as an adult, shape who you're going to grow up to be, and your level of self-esteem and your level of self-worth. So it's like also recognizing that you do deserve those things as well as those other fundamental things. It doesn't make you ungrateful. It doesn't make you whiny or you're doing too much or you're asking for too much. No, you're not. These are fundamental things that you deserve, that you needed as a child, and what your inner child needs, because you now set yourself yearning for that as an adult. That could be yearning for that as from other people, but instead of you focusing on other people or other things to give it to you, you give it to yourself. Basically, you be that parent, you show up for your inner child, you show up for yourself. So when it comes to reparenting yourself, you might actually acknowledge that you have both a mother wound and a father wound. I'm not going to say that you're one of the unlucky ones, because no one's unlucky here, but if you are one of the ones who have both your mother and father wound that you need to work on, then to consider how your father wound is specifically showing up and how your mother wound is specifically showing up. Not to go into the whole gender aspect of things, but mothers, the idea of mothers being more nurturing and, you know, being more loving, that's not the experience that everyone has at the end of the day. The idea that your mother is supposed to be the one who hugs you and kisses you and loves on you, and your dad provides you that structure, that strength, that accountability, that guidance that you need, that is something that not everyone gets to experience. And that means there's going to be specific aspects of your inner child that's going to need both. And there's probably going to be a disconnect and an imbalance there. And so when it comes to that, it's kind of balancing out both sides. What did you need from your mother and what did you need from your father, and bringing that together to reparent yourself and heal your inner child, and allowing your inner child to guide you. And if it's from one parent, then there you go, there's less work that you need to do. But if it's two parents, again, acknowledging both is so important. Reparenting your inner child is also about self-soothing as well, giving yourself the ability to understand your emotions, understand your feelings, finding that childlike joy, giving yourself the ability to reconnect with yourself, reconnect with your inner child. So you can write a letter to your inner child. You can write like what your ideal mother or father could be, and you can also use that to kind of give you motivation to think about how you would like to show up as a parent for your children, should you wish to have them, or if you do have them already. The most important thing for you to do on your healing journey is connect the dots and understand how aspects of your childhood are showing up as an adult, if your inner child is ruling your adult life. So that could mean
if you are constantly triggered by people, if you're constantly getting yourself in unhealthy relationships, if you have a void or a level of emptiness within yourself that you're trying to fulfill in the wrong ways, then yes, acknowledging those things is so important for you to get on your healing journey and also reparent yourself and heal your inner child. Don't neglect your inner child as an adult, because a lot of the behaviors that you're doing that are negative or harming you, it's actually your inner child trying to self-soothe, your inner child trying to get what they didn't get as a child, what they deserved and what they needed as a child. Thank you for listening to this episode, and I will see you in my next episode.